Space rock is a subgenre of rock music. The term originally referred to a group of early, mostly British, 1970s progressive and psychedelic rock bands such as Hawkwind, Gong, and Pink Floyd, characterized by slow, lengthy instrumental passages dominated by electronic organs, synthesizers, experimental guitar work and science fiction or outer space-related lyrical themes, though it was later repurposed to refer to a series of late 1980s British alternative rock bands that drew from earlier influences to create a more ambient but still melodic form of pop music. The term was revived in the 21st century to refer to a new crop of bands including the Flowers of Hell, Comets on Fire, Flotation, Toy Warning and Angels and Airwaves, who diversely draw upon the ideas and sounds of both waves of the genre's founders. History Origins and emergence Man's entry into outer space provided ample subject matter for rock and roll and R&B songs from the mid-1950s through the early 1960s. It also inspired new sounds and sound effects to be used in the music itself. A prominent early example of space rock is the 1959 concept album I Hear a New World by British producer and songwriter Joe Meek. The album was inspired by the space race and concerned man's first close encounter with alien life forms. Meek then went on to have a UK and US no-one success in 1961 with Telstar, named after the newly launched communications satellite and thus intended to commemorate the new space age. Its main instrument was a clavioline, an electronic forerunner of synthesizers. Space rock emerged from the late 1960s psychedelic music scene in Britain, and was closely associated with the progressive rock movement of the same era. Pink Floyd's early albums contain pioneering examples of space rock, Lucifer Sam, Astronomy Domin, Power Talk H, and Interstellar Overdrive from their 1967 debut album The Piper at the Gates of Dawn are examples. Their second album A Saucerful of Secrets contained further examples, Let There Be More Light, and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun with explicit science fiction themes, and their third, More had Cirrus Minor. In early 1971, Pink Floyd began writing the song that would become known as Echoes, from the 1971 album Medal. The song was performed from April until September 1971, with an alternative set of lyrics, written about two planets meeting in space. Before the Medal album released, the lyrics were changed to an aquatic theme, because of the band's concern that they were being labeled as a space rock band. The Beatles' song Flying, originally titled Aerial Tour Instrumental, was a psychedelic instrumental about the sensation of flying, whether in a craft or in your own head space. The Rolling Stones' song 2000 Light Years from Home, which drew heavily on some of the aforementioned Pink Floyd songs, is another early form of space rock. Jimi Hendrix is also an early innovator of the genre, with such tracks as Third Stone from the Sun, 1983, and The Stars That Play with Laughing Sam's Dice. David Bowie's Space Oddity is, apart from Telstar, probably the best example of a space rock song achieving mainstream recognition. The Steve Miller Band's Space Cowboy was also about space. It has a very heavy backbeat in the key of F minor. A major album in the history of space rock was Hawkwind's Space Ritual, a two-disc live album advertised as 88 minutes of brain damage documenting Hawkwind's successful 1972 tour that included a liquid light show and lasers, nude dancers, wild costumes and psychedelic imagery. This hard-edged concert experience attracted a motley but dedicated collection of psychedelic drug users, science fiction fans and motorcycle riders. The science fiction author Michael Moorcock collaborated with Hawkwind on many occasions and wrote the lyrics for many of the spoken word sections on Space Ritual. Apart from Hawkwind, Mark Bolan and his band T-Rex probably had the most success with space rock, mainly appearing on album tracks such as Ballrooms of Mars, Venus Loon, and Spaceball Ricochet, although he characterized his music as cosmic rock at the end of his first no-one hit in the UK, Hot Love. Like Hawkwind's Dave Brock, Bolan used pentatonic guitar progressions to design riffs. Other examples include Flaming Youth's only album Arc 2, Artsicle's Artsicle, Mournblade's Time's Running Out, and the collaborative concept album The Zodiac, Cosmic Sounds. 1990s revival. By the early 1990s, the term space rock came to be used when describing numerous American and British alternative rock bands of the time. Shoegazing, stoner rock, metal and noise pop genres emerged into the mainstream with the explosion of bands such as Kiss, Monster Magnet, Sloth, The Verve, My Bloody Valentine, Flying Saucer Attack, Loop, Ride, Shiner, The Flaming Lips, Failure, Year of the Rabbit, Cave In, Sundial, Hum, Orange Goblin, Spaceman 3, Spiritualized, and Mercury. The sonic experimentation and emphasis placed on texture by these bands led them to be dubbed space rock, although most would more readily be categorized in other genres such as shoegazing or stoner metal. In the mid-1990s, a number of bands built on the space rock styles of Hawkwind and Gong appeared in America. Some of these bands were signed to Cleopatra Records, which then proceeded to release numerous space rock compilations. Starting in 1997, David Allen of Gong, along with members of Hawkwind and other space rock bands, started to perform with Spirits Burning, a studio project created to celebrate space rock. The Strange Days festivals from 1997 to 2001 showcased the American space rock scene in 3-day outdoor festivals. A Michigan-based space rock scene included Burnt Hair Records, Dala Records, and bands such as Windy and Carl, Mahogany, Sweet Trip, Far One Quarter Zao and Auburn Lull. This was a modern movement of the traditional space rock sound and was pinned Detroit space rock. In the 21st century, space rock bands such as Hawkwind and Gong continued to perform live in the 2000s. Hawkwind has produced numerous offshoots with former members. Influences from space rock can be heard in UK bands Radiohead, Muse, Amplifier, Ocean Size, Porcupine Tree, Kasabian, and Mugstar, as well as American bands Angels and Airwaves, Autolux, The Boxing Lesson, Nebula, Cloudland Canyon, Hope Esfal, Lumerians, The Mars Volta, The Secret Machines, Starset, 30 Seconds to Mars, Tool, and Zombie. Star One's 2002 space metal album mixes space rock and progressive metal, and many of the songs are linked conceptually by having cult science fiction movies or TV series as their subjects. In the past decade, a space rock theme has swept through the indie music scene on Day of South Korea. Bands such as Rock and Roll Radio, Galaxy Express, Apollo 18, among many others, have spacey elements in their music. In South Korea, such bands with a spacey sound and theme are referred to in the media and among fans as space rock or Ishaish currency 1/2 in Korean. The first reported involvement of NASA in space rock came in 2009 when an off-duty worker from the shuttle program synchronized footage of a Discovery launch with the Flowers of Hell's Sympathy for Vengeance in an online video which became popular amongst staff at the Kennedy Space Center. In May 2013, Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield created the first music video filmed entirely in outer space, with his YouTube video of himself singing David Bowie's Space Oddity on board the International Space Station. In 2011, Nashville-based singer-songwriter Andrew Osinger launched a Kickstarter campaign for his concept album Leonard the Lonely Astronaut. The album raised nearly $19,000 and in early 2012 the album was released. The album is written entirely from the point of view of Leonard, the sole passenger on a spaceship, who has recently gone through a divorce. Osinger, for the recording of this project, built a set in his studio, resembling the interior of his character's spaceship. From the set, he recorded the entire album. In 2014, Starset released its debut album Transmissions. The band's self-described style, cinematic rock, is largely built on the styles of space rock. See also, New Gaze. References